This is the Hiking and Backpacking with Goose podcast. This episode is a part of a short series covering hikes in the Cataloochee area of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I am recording this introduction the evening before my hike at base camp. Tomorrow I'll hike Palmer Creek Trail. The Cataloochee area of the park is one of the more remote areas of the park and cannot be accessed by the main entrances in Cherokee or Gatlinburg. It's accessed off of Cove Creek Road near Maggie Valley, North Carolina. Cataloochee is well known for its herds of elk which roam around the large fields and woods of Cataloochee. Elk used to be abundant in the southern Appalachian Mountains, but the last elk in North Carolina was killed in the late 1700s and in Tennessee in the mid-1800s. However, elk were reintroduced to the Smokies in 2001 when a herd of 25 elk were placed in the Cataloochee area of the park. A second similar-sized herd was introduced to Cataloochee the following year. The herds have done very well over the years and can be seen in several large open fields in the Cataloochee Valley. It was estimated a few years ago that there were about 240 elk in the park. After only a couple of years, some of the elk made their way through the mountains to the Oconaluftee area of the park, and another herd was established there and is doing well. They are also known to frequently wander into nearby Cherokee, North Carolina, where they create traffic problems. I've seen elk in all of those places at one time or another. Since elk seem to have no fear of cars, park volunteers are in the park during the busy season to prevent accidents and to keep gawkers at a safe distance from these very large and dangerous animals. The park encourages you, for your own safety, to give elk and bear a wide berth. Willfully approaching an elk within 50 yards is illegal and can result in a fine and arrest. I don't know about you, but I don't look good in orange, so I'll enjoy looking at the elk from a safe distance. The elk are not without predators. While black bears are mostly vegetarian, they have been known to kill and eat small elk calves if they have the opportunity. Remember that bears can be dangerous to people too, and I recommend that you carry bear spray with you when hiking in the Smokies. I'm not really sure how many, if any, elk have actually been killed by black bears in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I hope to take some time for elk viewing while in Cataloochee. Here's a quick viewing tip that a ranger told me. The best times for viewing elk are early morning, late in the day, or during rainy, foggy, and cloudy days like today. You see, elk don't like the hot sun. They typically bed down in the woods during hot and sunny periods, and actually I think the same rule applies to viewing bears as well. So, rainy days when you don't want to get wet hiking are great times for elk and bear viewing from the dry and warm comfort of your car. Now, on to the hike. When I had originally planned my series of hikes in Cataloochee, I had planned to hike some other trails, but in reviewing the current conditions of the trails, I found that two of those trails had been severely damaged by Hurricane Helene, and that sections of those trails were still impassable. Luckily, there are a lot of other trails to choose from. This was one of my alternative hikes. My hike tomorrow will start at Pretty Hollow Gap Trailhead, which is just off of Cataloochee Road at about 1.6 miles. I'll turn left on the Palmer Creek Trail, where I'll quickly cross a stream on one of those Indiana Jones-style bridges. For the next 1.6 miles, the trail will be elevated but very near Palmer Creek. In fact, the trail closely follows the creek for most of the hike, so I should constantly hear the soothing sounds of a mountain stream. During this section of the hike, I'll also cross a second rustic footbridge. As the trail continues, it's supposed to get steeper, and at about 5 miles into my hike, I'll reach the terminus of the trail at Balsam Mountain Road. At that point, I'll take a well-deserved break and do the halftime report. There are very few online trail reviews of this hike, so I remain skeptical, but am told that the elevation gain of this hike will be about 1,814 feet, and that the total out and back distance will be 9.8 miles. I'll catch up with you shortly during the halftime report. It's the halftime report on Palmer Creek Trail. Well, I made it to Balsam Mountain Road, but it wasn't easy. I'll tell you more in a little bit. But first, last night in camp, I heard some noise. I thought it was probably another camper headed to the restrooms, so I went back to sleep. But when I got up in the morning, I found that a bear had knocked down my aquatainer, which is a big water container thingy, off of the picnic table, and this had 50 pounds of water in it. And it had punctured holes in it with its claws. So that water container is toast at this point. Sure can't use it anymore. I then went ahead and had a couple of cups of Starbucks instant coffee and headed to the trailhead. During the hike on the first part of the trail, there were visible remnants of the damage caused by Hurricane Helene in the stream that runs along Pretty Hollow Trail, which is the access trail you take to get to this one. There were huge piles of trees, large ones, in the stream. And also on the trail itself in certain sections that were lower lying, all of the soil had been washed off of the trail, so there was nothing but rocks. So that was a little bit challenging to walk over. I then reached Palmer Creek Trail and crossed the stream on the primitive bridge that I had mentioned in the preview. By the way, that was the only bridge on the entire hike. About halfway into the hike, I had to wade through a stream about shin deep. There was no other way to get across it. And then I had to wade across another creek about ankle deep about a half mile later. At that location on a tree right on the creek, there was a plaque in honor of a deceased person. I hope they didn't die out there on the trail. The basic condition of this trail is not good. There's a lot of down trees on the trail. It is very overgrown in multiple places, and it is very, very narrow throughout most of the hike. It really doesn't look like it gets much traffic at all, and it doesn't look like it's been maintained in years. During this hike, I also had to rock hop across several smaller streams in various places. In regards to elevation gain, the bulk of that is during the last 1 3/4 miles, which makes that part quite strenuous, actually. So far, I haven't seen anybody on the trail, and so far, I haven't seen any traffic on this gravel road at the other end of the trail. So I think this has not been one of my favorite hikes so far. I'll let you know a little later on after I've gotten back to camp and had time to think about it. My feet are wet and cold, so I guess I'll go ahead and eat and get hydrated so I can start my return hike so my feet can get even wetter on the return hike. That's all for now. I'll catch up with you again on the wrap-up. As I started on the return hike, I noticed a very clear, wide, and grassy opening not far from the upper trailhead. So I decided to explore a little and found a sort of small tower at the end of the short trail. At first I assumed that it was a weather station, but as I looked more closely at it, I realized that it didn't have wind or rain gauges. In fact, it looked like a cylindrical tube with a solar panel on the side and an antenna on the top. So I'm guessing that this is a two-way radio repeater tower used by the Park Service for communication. So after a few minutes looking at the tower, I continued on. My return hike was much like the earlier part of the hike, except it was downhill. I had to wade through the same two streams, so my feet, socks, and boots were thoroughly soaked. The names of those two creeks were Lost Bottom Creek and Beach Creek, according to my topo map. The trail conditions were not very good at all. Lots of debris to walk through, down trees, poor trail conditions, wet stream crossings, and lots of overgrown weeds to push through. But at least it was all downhill. When I got back to the trailhead and the Goosemobile, I quickly changed out of my wet boots and socks into others that I keep handy in case of such an event. During this entire hike, I didn't see another soul. This isn't a popular trail, and now I see why. I rate this as a difficult hike, not because of the elevation gain, but for the condition of the trail and the water crossings. The total distance of my hike on Palmer Creek Trail was 10.5 miles, with a total elevation gain of 1,823 feet. This was not an enjoyable hike, and I would not recommend it to anyone. If you're looking for hikes in Cataloochee, pass on this one. After the hike, I did have an opportunity to research the plaque honoring the deceased person, and I was able to find his obituary. He was from several states away, where he seemed to have lived his entire life, and in fact, he died in his home state. So he was not a local, and he didn't die on the trail, but I'm assuming that the Smokies, and maybe that particular location, was very important to him. Or at least his family or friends thought so. Maybe he was a hiker, or maybe he enjoyed fly fishing for trout. I'll never know. I did have the opportunity to view some elk after the hike. There were all of these photographers lined up on the side of the road with high-end cameras with telephoto lenses having a grand old time. While watching these guys, I had a flashback to my time in Yellowstone, where I had seen many of these wildlife photographers. Anyway, big elk are fun to watch, and I got a good photo of a big bull elk that I'll post on Instagram. To access Cataloochee, you'll need to take the very windy Cove Creek Road, which can be accessed on Highway 276. Cove Creek Road is very near Interstate 40 at exit 20. Beware that there is no sign if you're coming off of Interstate 40 onto 276, but it is the first road on the right after you get onto 276. There is a sign if you're coming from the other direction on Highway 276. Also beware that Cove Creek Road turns into a gravel road about halfway to Cataloochee. As you drive up the road, you'll likely notice a Bigfoot statue on the left. It's hard to miss. The road changes to gravel shortly after Bigfoot. Cove Creek Road is about 11 miles long. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe to it and give it a good rating on the podcast platform that you use. The algorithms look for that, and it helps to expand listenership, which helps me to spread the word about this podcast. Also, please recommend it to your friends who enjoy hiking and outdoor adventures. If you like it, they'll probably like it too. Photos taken during today's hike can be found on Instagram, where my name is Goosa Hikin'. That's GOOSEAHIKIN. A final thought. As always, enjoying the great outdoors is most certainly enjoyable and fun. But please don't engage in strenuous physical activities that are beyond your capabilities or your physical condition. Make sure you're familiar with the wildlife you could encounter on your journey so you can be prepared. Also, make sure that you're wearing weather-appropriate clothing, carrying an emergency medical kit, water and a map, and always stay on the trail. And go to church this Sunday.